All right. So, as mentioned during the opening, our our theme this month is God and music, and I love this theme because I love God and I love music, two of my favorite things in life. And growing up in the church, I remember, and I don't know if any of you all experienced the same thing, but we had those red books, the sacred selections and the hymns. And, I had my favorites, but one thing that I noticed as I got older is that every song had a scripture reference to it. And the scripture reference kind of played along with the song. It kind of had the same theme, which is great. Over the past several years, as my gospel music library expanded, there's a song that I heard and that we sing at my church on a pretty regular basis. It's called Trusting You by Anthony Brown and Group Therapy. And so tonight's lesson will be based on this song. And the scripture that was chosen to go along with this is Proverbs 3 and 5, a very familiar text by a very familiar person. So, question on the floor, and I'm actually going to ask for some participation here and get oh no, where did it go? Well, you just put it in the chat. So, the question on the floor is, what are the characteristics of someone you trust? Characteristics of someone you trust. So if you don't mind, put it in the chat. Um, the characteristics of someone you trust. Don't be shy. All right. Honesty and integrity. Honesty, reliable, safe. I like that. Any more? Loving, love for me, accountable. Yeah, these are really good. Compassion, kind, faithful. All right. Yeah. So I want you to think about this question in two different ways because I could ask you the opposite question. What are the characteristics of someone that you don't trust? And if I asked you that question, then you would answer what? Yeah, let's see what you would put in the chat for someone you do not trust or something you do not trust. All right, I see self-centered, a backstabber, someone who is shady. We have a liar, dishonesty twice. They lack accountability, envious. All right, disrespectful. Okay, yeah, these are good. Someone with a hidden agenda. I like that. Someone who's manipulative. All right, so thank you for your participation in that exercise. I'm sure, again, if I asked you to name someone who you consider trustful, you could think of someone. In fact, you could probably think of maybe five people at once. And if I asked you to think about someone who you think is someone you could not trust, you could probably think of 100 people, right? Because the number of people that we don't trust is probably much larger than the number of people that we actually do trust. So that gets us to our scripture tonight, which is Proverbs 3 and 5. Again, a very familiar text that we've heard many, many times before. And I want to read it to you. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Again, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. Again, whenever I do studies, I try to highlight the words that kind of jump out to me. So these words that are kind of in bold, these are the words that we'll take into consideration a little bit more tonight, and then the lesson will be yours. So the first word being trust. So what does it mean to trust? Trust in this sense means that you have placed your full confidence in whatever the thing is. All right. So some examples of this are when you get on a plane what do you do? Do you go to the pilot, to the cockpit and ask the pilot like where they went to school, how many hours of flight school they went through, if they've had something, an alcoholic beverage? No, you don't do that. You typically just go to your seat and sit down, and some of you put your headphones on, some of you go straight to sleep, and that's it. Why? Because you trust that whoever the airline is hired is competent, has met the requirements, and will not do anything to put you in danger. All right. When I go to sleep tonight, I'm going to get in my bed and I'm not checking the legs to see if it's stable. I'm not checking anything else. I'm just going to get in the bed because I trust that it can hold my weight because it's done it before, right? When we sit down in a chair, depending on the type of chair, if it's one of them little cheap plastic chairs, you might like put a little bit of weight on them, like, I don't know if I need to sit down in this because I don't know, it may not work. But if it's a chair that you sat in many, many times before, you don't worry about it, right? You just sit down and you don't think that it's going to fall. It's because you have full confidence in whatever it is. And some of the things that trust requires, and some of you already put it in the chat, so thank you for that. First thing is history. So is what you put your trust in, do you have the history with that person or that thing? Um, some of us have history with certain people, and we trust them because we've known them for a long time and we know where they live, right? We feel confident that they are who they say they are because we have history. Now, that shouldn't be the only thing because sometimes people hide stuff from us, right? But history is very important. So having that history and this long-term relationship is helpful in building trust. Also, few of you mentioned it in the chat earlier, but integrity. So, is this person going to do what they say they're going to do? Also, what do they do when no one else is around or they think they can get away with something? Do they do the right thing at all times? Again, this is a part of building trust, transparency, and honesty. Do they tell you if you ask them if they did something, do they kind of like, oh, well, are they transparent with you and are they honest with you? Again, if they're not, then you're likely not to trust them because they're not transparent and they don't look like they're honest. Good references. I love this one. So this is being able to, and this is especially true if you don't have necessarily a history with someone, but you can ask someone that knows them and say, hey, do you know such and such? And they can be like, oh, yeah, they're a great person, da 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 da. This has happened to me several times in the professional world where I may not know the person that's applying for the job, but I know somebody that does know them. And then I can ask them because I know the person and I have a relationship with that person who knows them. And I can say, hey, how is this person in the professional world? Oh yeah, they always show up on time. They ask good questions. They stay in a job for more than 3 days. All these things, right? That's a good reference. And so it's important, again, depending on the relationship that you're looking at, to have good references. Consistency. So this is important too. So can they do the same thing over and over again, or is it just, you show up one time and then you fall off the face of the earth, right? I hear single women say this all the time. I want a brother who's consistent, right? He may bring flowers the first time, but then he doesn't bring flowers the rest of the time, or he calls me one day and then I don't hear from him for like 3 weeks. Consistency, it's important and it helps again build trust. Discipline. This is also very important. Can you trust someone who is not disciplined? So they trying to save money, but every time you see them, they out at the mall or they want to do right, but they're not disciplined. Can you really trust that person? So if you say, all right, I need to give some money to somebody, would you give it to them? Probably not, because you feel like, well, they probably gonna spend my money, right? And then last but not least, individual needs to have good intentions. This is so true, because sometimes people do the right thing for the wrong reason. Sometimes people do the right thing for the wrong reason. So it may end up benefiting you, but they're really doing it so it can benefit them. And can you really trust someone that only has their self-interest in mind? Next, we got to think about the question, should you trust you? Should you trust you? In the scripture we read, it talked about not leaning on our own understanding. So I want you to think about the characteristics that we just talked about. Is someone honest? Are they transparent? Are they consistent? Well, I should say, are you transparent? Are you honest? Are you disciplined? Are you consistent? Do you have trustworthy traits? And the answer is no. You may be consistent, but maybe you're not honest. Maybe you're consistently dishonest, right? So, should you trust you? And the answer is no, because we are imperfect. And I know sometimes, we get growing in age, not necessarily maturity, but we grow chronologically and we think, we know, but we don't always know. And sometimes we don't do the right thing. So think about our history, think about what we've done or said we're going to do in the past, and ask yourself, should you trust you? Also, one of the reasons you should not lean on your own understanding is because you don't want to lean on yourself because our strength can fluctuate from time to time. Sometimes we're in our word on a daily basis and we feel close to God and everything is going great. And then life happens. We lose a job, we lose a loved one, uh, something crazy happens at work, and our study habits then decrease. And then we feel a little bit less closer to God. Or we have other people who are depending on us and they come to us with their problems and they're telling us what's going on. And at some point, we can't take anymore and we fold when there's too much weight on our shoulders. So that's another reason we should not trust ourselves. We also have to think about the scripture in Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things. So sometimes we tell ourselves, just like some of us told ourselves, on January 1st, I'm going to start a new habit of working out 4 times a week for 30 minutes so I can get my recommended 150 minutes a week, or 5 times a week, excuse me, for 30 minutes so I can get my recommended 150 minutes per week. And by February, we stopped, right? We had good intentions, but sometimes our mouth says something different than what we actually do. And sometimes, again, we do the right things for the wrong reasons. So our heart is deceitful and you really can't trust it. But again, we're talking about who we should trust in. All right. So what does fully trusting in God look like? We have to first pray before we plan. Pray before we plan. One of my favorite scriptures, 1 Samuel 30:8. This is David, and this is when he's been chased in the wilderness by Saul. And at this point, he has an opportunity to get some get back, right? And he's had some success in getting some get back. But I love what he did at this point in his life. Before he pursued the enemies. Again, these people were chasing him. So, it's like, well, I have justification to chase them because they chasing me. So I'm gonna get them back before they get me, right? That's normal thinking. But I like what he did. It says he prayed and asked God what he should do before he pursued. And God told him to pursue, and so he did. Now, you compare this to his situation when he saw Bathsheba. Now, he didn't pray before he planned that. He just did what he wanted to do. And you see where that led for him and his family and how much hurt that caused for him and his family in the long term. So, the same person, two different ways that he went. First situation, he prayed before he planned. Second situation, he just did what he wanted to do. So let's make sure that we're praying before we plan something and not just saying, God, I'm going to include you afterwards, because that's not how this works. Next thing we can do to make sure that we're fully trusting in God is check your reaction the next time whatever it may be, does not go your way. So think about that disappointment that you've had. Oh, I didn't get that job. Oh, this girl didn't say yes to me when I asked her out. Oh, such whatever the case may be. How do you react to a no when things don't go your way, when life doesn't go your way? Even though you prayed for it, even though you may have fasted, and even though you know God really knows this is what you desire, and the answer is no. I want us to consider two responses, one from Job and one from Naomi. Job, again, we know his story. He lost everything. He responded to losing everything by saying, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Through all this, Job did not sin, nor did he blame God. Now, I want you to compare how Naomi reacted to, again, losing everything. Again, she lost her family. There was famine in the land. She says, why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has witnessed against me, the Almighty has afflicted me? So Job didn't blame God. Naomi is assigning her misfortune to God. Now, we know how both stories end. They ended up being just fine. Job got everything he lost back times two. Naomi ended up living a pretty good life, all things considered. But how do you react when God tells you no? If it's laying blame on God, and it's, again, nothing wrong with being disappointed, but do you lay blame at God, or do you just say, you know what, God said no, and I accept that, and I know that there's something greater for me because of this thing, whatever it may be. Um, so as we prepare to close, I want to read the lyrics to this song because I just love the lyrics to the song. You did not create me to worry. You did not create me to fear. You created me to worship daily. So I'm going to leave it all right here. My hands are raised because I surrender. Your will, not mine, but your will is what's best for me. I worship you because you're Jehovah Jireh. I bow before the King of Kings. No more crying, no more complaining. I believe your word is true. Lord, you promised never to leave me lonely. So this is what I'm going to do. I will trust in you, Lord. I will trust in you, Lord. I will put my trust in you. As we close, I want to give some homework, if you will, some things that we can do this week to help continue for us to put our trust in God. So the first thing is I want you to listen to the song, and when you get a chance, listen to the song Trust in You by Anthony Brown in Group Therapy. Next thing I want you to do is pray before you plan. Again, we make all these plans all the time, and we really don't include God when we really should, because it says that He's not going to lead us in a way that's going to be the wrong path. So please, please, please pray before you plan. Ask for permission instead of forgiveness. Some people just do stuff. And they were like, I'll ask for forgiveness later. Well, child of God, again, we have a higher authority that we answer to. And so it's important that we ask for permission instead of forgiveness. He'll forgive you, but ask for permission first. And sometimes it'll save us a lot of the heartache that we experience. Next, I want you to observe your behavior when you hear a no. How do you react to it? Is it like Job, or is it like Naomi? And then last but not least, sometimes very difficult to do, especially for adults. But I want you to give up, and not give up on life, but I want you to give up your will to drive your life, because guess what? It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God. Appreciate y'all. Looking forward to the comments, questions, and I love you all.